The silent plea. The emergency transmission cut through the cosmic void like a knife through silk. Dr. Elena Vasquez pressed her trembling fingers against the communication panel, her breath fogging the screen as explosions rocked the research station around her. Through the reinforced windows of Kepler 442 bits research outpost, she could see the dark shapes moving against the star-filled sky, their forms defying every law of physics she thought she understood. This is Dr. Elena Vasquez of the Kepler 442 bits research station. She spoke into the transmitter, her voice steady despite the chaos. We are under attack by unknown hostile entities. Our defensive systems are failing. We have 47 scientists, engineers, and support staff trapped here. Please, if anyone receives this message, we need immediate assistance. The message broadcast across 17 different frequencies, reaching every major civilization in the galactic community. Elena waited, watching the communication board for any sign of response, while the station shuddered under another wave of attacks. The creatures outside seemed to be testing their defenses, probing for weaknesses with an intelligence that chilled her to the bone. Hours passed. The first response came from the Zentorian Empire, their crystalline voices carrying across the void with mechanical precision. Research Station Kepler 442 bits, we acknowledge your distress call. Unfortunately, our military forces are currently engaged in territorial disputes. We cannot provide assistance at this time. Elena's heart sank, but she maintained hope. The Zentorians were always cautious, preferring to avoid conflicts that didn't directly benefit them. Surely others would respond. The Aquatic Confederation of Tiamat was next. Dr. Vasquez, we have received your transmission. Our naval forces require specialized atmospheric conditions to operate effectively. We regret that we cannot mount a rescue operation in your sector. One by one, the responses came in, each carrying the same underlying message wrapped in diplomatic language. The Insectoid Collective cited resource allocation issues. The silicon-based architects claimed their ships were incompatible with carbon-based rescue operations. The ethereal minds of Proxima simply stated that physical intervention went against their philosophical principles. As the rejections poured in, Elena began to understand the truth behind their excuses. In the 12 years since first contact with the broader galactic community, she had heard the whispers, the carefully worded warnings about her species. Humans were new to the galactic stage, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 2 decades ago, but their reputation had already spread like wildfire across the stars. The galaxy remembered what humans had done during the siege of New Babylon, when Captain Marcus Torres had deliberately crashed his ship into an asteroid to redirect it away from a civilian colony, saving 3 million lives while sacrificing his crew of 200. They remembered the incident at Vega Prime, where human explorers had ventured into a radioactive wasteland to rescue survivors of a crashed alien vessel, despite the fact that the radiation would kill them within hours. Humans, the galaxy had concluded, were either incredibly brave or completely insane. Most civilizations couldn't decide which assessment was more terrifying. Elena understood now why no one was coming. The same reputation that made humans feared also made them avoided. Other species preferred their heroes to be predictable, their warriors to follow established protocols. Humans did neither. As the station's shields flickered and died, Elena prepared what she thought would be her final transmission. But before she could speak, a new voice crackled through the speakers. The accent was distinctly human, carrying the rough edges of someone who had spent years in space. Research Station Kepler 442 bits. This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth Alliance Rapid Response Fleet. We received your distress call. Hold tight, Doc. The cavalry is coming. Elena nearly collapsed with relief. Thank you, Commander. But I should warn you, we don't know what these things are. They appear out of nowhere, and they seem to be immune to our energy weapons. Copy that, Doctor. We've dealt with unknowns before. ETA is 40 minutes. Keep your people safe until we get there. The transmission ended, leaving Elena alone with her thoughts and the sound of the creatures outside. She wondered how many ships the humans were sending, how they planned to deal with entities that seemed to exist partially outside normal spacetime. Then she remembered something her grandmother used to say: "When everyone else runs away, you call the crazy ones." Perhaps being considered crazy wasn't such a bad thing after all. 40 minutes later, Elena watched through the observation deck as 3 human ships dropped out of hyperspace. They weren't the massive dreadnoughts she had expected, but rather medium-sized vessels that looked like they had been built for speed and maneuverability rather than overwhelming firepower. As she watched, the lead ship began broadcasting on all frequencies. "Unknown entities attacking Kepler 442 bits research station. This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth Alliance. You have 60 seconds to withdraw from this system, or we will be forced to take action." The response was immediate and terrifying. The dark shapes outside the station suddenly coalesced into more defined forms, revealing creatures that seemed to be made of living shadow and twisted metal. Their reply came not through radio waves but directly into the minds of everyone present, a voice that felt like ice water being poured into their souls. "We are the Devourers. We have consumed the light of 1,000 suns and the hope of 1,000,000 worlds. You are not welcome here, young species. Flee now or join those we have already claimed." Elena felt her knees buckle at the mental assault, but Commander Chen's response came immediately, clear and unshaken. "Thanks for the introduction, but we'll be staying. All human vessels, execute pattern Omega-7. Remember, people, we've got innocents depending on us." What happened next defied every tactical manual Elena had ever read. Instead of forming a defensive line or attempting to establish superior firepower positions, the human ships scattered in different directions, each one heading directly toward the largest concentrations of devourer entities. It looked like suicide, and Elena was certain she was about to witness the destruction of humanity's only rescue fleet. But as the ships closed distance with their targets, something unexpected happened. The Devourers, beings that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia, according to ancient records Elena was only now beginning to remember, seemed confused by the human tactics. They had expected fear, retreat, or at least conventional warfare. Instead, they faced opponents who seemed to view suicide charges as a viable opening strategy. The lead human ship, Chen's vessel, flew directly into the center of the largest devourer formation. Elena watched in horror as the dark entities swarmed around it, certain that she was witnessing the death of her rescuers. But then the ship's hull began to glow with an energy signature she didn't recognize, and suddenly the Devourers were screaming in harmonics that shattered several of the station's remaining windows. "That's solar plasma, boys and girls." Chen's voice came over the radio, steady and almost cheerful. "Turns out these things really don't like direct exposure to stellar radiation." Who knew? Elena realized with growing amazement that the humans hadn't come to fight the Devourers in conventional terms. They had come to experiment, to test, to figure out what these ancient entities were and how to stop them. While every other species in the galaxy had hidden behind fear and protocol, humans had simply asked themselves, what happens if we try this? As the battle continued, Elena began to understand why the galaxy feared her species. It wasn't because humans were stronger or more advanced than other civilizations. It was because when faced with the impossible, humans didn't calculate odds or weigh political consequences. They simply asked what needed to be done and then figured out how to do it. The Devourers, for the first time in eons, were learning what it meant to face opponents who had never heard the word impossible. When fear becomes hope. The battle raged for 3 hours, and Elena watched every moment from the station's observation deck. The human ships moved with a coordination that seemed almost supernatural, each vessel anticipating the other's movements in ways that defied explanation. But it was their tactics that truly amazed her. Commander Chen's flagship had become a mobile laboratory, constantly adjusting its energy output and weapon configurations based on real-time analysis of the Devourers' reactions. The second ship, piloted by someone Chen called Reckless Rodriguez, was testing the limits of the entity's physical manifestation by literally flying through them while recording every possible data point. The third vessel, under the command of Captain Liu, was doing something Elena couldn't quite understand but involved manipulating local gravitational fields in ways that made the Devorer's forms unstable. Dr. Vasquez. Chen's voice came through the communicator. We're going to need you to power down all your station's defensive systems and redirect that energy to your main transmitter. We need to broadcast something very specific. Commander, without our shields, those things will tear through the station's hull in minutes, Elena replied, watching as several Devorers circled closer to the research outpost. Trust me, Doc. We've got a plan, but it requires complete faith in human stubbornness. Elena looked at her crew, 46 other souls who had signed up for peaceful scientific research and instead found themselves in the middle of what appeared to be a galactic horror story. To her surprise, every one of them nodded their agreement. They had come this far trusting in human rescue. They would go the rest of the way trusting in human ingenuity. Systems powering down now, Commander. You've got full transmitter control. What happened next would be studied by xenopsychologists for generations to come. Instead of broadcasting a weapon or some kind of energy pulse, the human ships began transmitting something far more dangerous: information. Elena listened in growing amazement as Commander Chen began a running commentary on everything the human fleet had learned about the Devorers in the past 3 hours. She detailed their weaknesses, their apparent aversion to certain forms of radiation, their inability to maintain cohesion when exposed to specific gravitational anomalies, and most importantly, their psychological dependency on fear and despair. Attention all vessels and stations within broadcast range. Chen's voice carried across multiple star systems. This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth Alliance. We are currently engaged with entities that have been identified as the Devorers, the legendary terror of the Outer Rim. We are pleased to report that they are not invincible, immortal, or unstoppable. They are simply very old, very mean, and very used to people running away from them. The broadcast continued with detailed tactical information, technical specifications, and step-by-step instructions for recreating the humans' anti-Devorer weapons. Elena realized with growing excitement that the humans weren't just fighting these entities, they were demystifying them, stripping away the aura of inevitable doom that had surrounded the Devorers for millennia. But the most remarkable part came when Chen addressed the entities directly. To the Devorers currently attacking this research station, you've made a fundamental error in judgment. You assumed we would be like every other species you've encountered. You expected us to fear you, to despair, to give up hope when faced with your reputation. But here's something you should know about humans. We specialize in impossible situations. The psychological impact on the Devorers was immediate and devastating. Beings that had fed on fear and despair for eons suddenly found themselves facing opponents who viewed their legendary status as nothing more than an interesting puzzle to solve. Elena watched as several of the entities began to lose cohesion, their forms becoming less stable as their primary psychological weapon was turned against them. Captain Rodriguez's voice joined the broadcast. Oh, and another thing. We figured out why you attack research stations and isolated colonies. You're not actually that tough, are you? You pick on targets that can't fight back because you know that any civilization with real military capability could probably take you apart once they stop being scared of your reputation. The Devorer's mental scream of rage and frustration echoed across space, but Elena noticed something else in that psychic howl: fear. For the first time in their existence, the legendary terrors of the galaxy were afraid. The tide of battle turned completely. The Devorers, stripped of their psychological advantage and faced with opponents who treated them like any other military problem to be solved, began to retreat. But the humans weren't finished. All ships, pattern Delta 9. Chen commanded. We're not letting these things escape to terrorize someone else next week. What followed was the systematic destruction of entities that the galaxy had considered unstoppable for over 10,000 years. The humans didn't do it through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through the simple application of scientific method, tactical flexibility, and an absolute refusal to accept that any problem couldn't be solved. When the last devourer had been either destroyed or driven off, Alina finally allowed herself to believe that they had survived. The human fleet had done the impossible. They had defeated legends, but the real surprise came in the aftermath. As news of the battle spread through the galactic communication networks, something unprecedented happened. The same civilizations that had refused to help began sending messages of congratulation, requests for the tactical data the humans had gathered, and most importantly, formal apologies for their earlier refusal to assist. Ambassador Zethkar of the Reptilian Confederacy arrived 3 days later, his scales showing the color patterns Alina had learned indicated deep shame. "Dr. Vasquez, I must speak with your commander, Chen. My government wishes to formally apologize for our response to your distress call." Chen, her uniform still showing the wear of 3 days of continuous battle, met with the ambassador in the station's main conference room. Alina was invited to observe, and she watched as one of the galaxy's most respected diplomats struggled to find words. "Commander, we thought we were being wise by avoiding conflict with the devourers. Our species has survived for over 50,000 years by being cautious, by avoiding unnecessary risks." Chen nodded politely. "That's a reasonable approach, Ambassador. Risk assessment is important. But we fail to consider that sometimes caution becomes cowardice, and wisdom becomes mere self-preservation. When we heard the distress call, we calculated the odds and decided that the risk was too great. We forgot that some things are worth risking everything for." Alina watched as Chen smiled, and she realized that this was the moment the galaxy would remember. Not the battle itself, but this conversation, this acknowledgement that sometimes you needed people who were willing to be called crazy, reckless, or fearsome. "Ambassador, here's something about humans you should know," Chen said, her voice carrying the same steady tone she had used while facing down legendary monsters. "We don't calculate odds when innocent people are in danger. We don't weigh political consequences when someone needs help. That's not because we're fearless or stupid or suicidal. It's because we've learned that the things worth preserving in this universe are usually the things worth dying for." Zethkar's scales shifted to patterns Alina didn't recognize, but his voice carried a tone of newfound respect. "Perhaps the galaxy has been wrong about your species, Commander. We called you fearsome because we misunderstood what we were seeing. We thought your willingness to face impossible odds was madness. Now we realize it was courage." Over the following weeks, as the story of the battle spread throughout the galactic community, Alina watched a fundamental shift in how other species viewed humanity. The same traits that had made them feared. Their refusal to accept defeat, their willingness to sacrifice for strangers, their tendency to treat impossible situations as merely difficult problems, were suddenly being recognized as virtues. The galaxy had spent millennia hiding from the devourers, accepting their existence as an immutable fact of cosmic life. It had taken a species barely 20 years into space travel to ask the simple question, what if we just fought them? Alina often thought about that night, watching the human ships drop out of hyperspace when no one else would come. She realized that sometimes the most important thing about a reputation wasn't whether it made you feared or loved, but whether it made you the kind of person others could count on when everything went wrong. The research station was rebuilt, expanded, and turned into a joint human-alien facility dedicated to studying entities like the devourers. But more importantly, it became a symbol of something the galaxy had almost forgotten. Sometimes the fearsome ones are fearsome precisely because they're the ones willing to stand between you and the darkness. As Alina often told visitors to the memorial erected for the human crews who had saved them, we learned that day that reputation is a funny thing. The galaxy was afraid of humans because they thought we were dangerous. They were right. We are dangerous to anything that threatens innocent people. The memorial's inscription, written in 17 different languages, Simply read. When everyone else stayed silent, only the fearsome people came to assist. And because they did, hope survives.